All right. People should be able to hear me,
86.
but they should, okay.
187.
They should only see a logo. And now, you should only see a wooden background. This is very interesting, compelling stuff, isn't it? All right, I think we're ready to roll. Are you ready over there?
Ready!
Young lady,
I'm ready!
you guys want to say hi to Nicole before we start? Oops. Hi, Nicole.
Hello, YouTube and everyone watching.
All you other people. All right. It is a fine Friday morning. I've got Dunkin' Donuts. Those of you on the East Coast, you're lunchtime at this point, huh? All right, let's get this thing rolling. I'm going to start the recording. Incidentally, if you're catching this live, maybe you have to go. You can't see the whole thing. It is going to be recorded. It will be edited later, and there will be an edited version available, which will be a little more concise than the one that's live. Because with live, there's always these little things in between that wind up taking up our time. All right, so welcome to the first official TWW Live. Now, broadcasting live is nothing new to us. We've been doing it since, well, frankly, since it was possible. We used to broadcast from our shop on Ustream years ago. It was a lot of fun, but things have really evolved since then, and the expectation to have faster paced content and a little bit more professional presentation is being pretty obvious, pretty clear to me that that's what we need to do. And frankly, got to be honest, the last few years with the birth of our son really knocked us for a bit of a loop in terms of content production and connection with the community. So this is kind of our effort to get back to our roots where we used to always have these live sessions to open up questions to the community and also just show you some cool stuff that we happen to be coming across. So that's really the goal with this, and I hope you like it. It's going to be something a little bit different. We have some pretty cool topics to talk about today and giveaway stuff, and there's a whole bunch of segments here, all right? So let's just dive right into it. The first one is focused on our giveaways. Now, we have giveaways every month at The Wood Whisperer. You go to thewoodwhisperer.com/giveaway. You'll find the details on how to enter. So very quickly, we'll announce last month's winners. Janet B. won a Festool CT36, that's the big guy, and an ETS sander, which is the sander that I use every day in my shop. That's a killer combination, and thank you, Festool, for that. Janet is enjoying her sander now, I'm sure, at this point.
Yeah.
Brian got the 3M safety bundle, which includes dust mask and hearing protection, eye protection, all kinds of stuff. So congratulations to you guys. Now we have to.
Before we moved into the contest, because you mentioned the 3M stuff, right now Amazon is partnering with 3M. So if you watch those safety videos, if you've seen the glasses and the respirator, they're on sale right now on Amazon, 15% off.
Do you know how many people are annoyed that they
I
bought
know,
it? Like,
I didn't know
they bought
were
it
gonna
right
do
after
that.
we did the video.
I didn't realize they were going to do that.
So yeah,
But,
check that out. That's always a cool thing. Now, this month's giveaways, we got a couple of really, really good ones. Let's start with the sprayer. It's the Fuji Mini-Mite 3-stage turbine. Now, if you're not familiar with what this is, it's this bad boy right here. I know.
This isn't the Mini though. This is
Well, no.
the Mini-Mite.
What I've got here is it's the Q4. This is a higher grade unit. They make a couple different ones. If the Q is in the name, it means it has extra stuff to kind of make it quieter. The Mini-Mite has the same power, but it's probably just a little bit louder.
Maybe smaller?
I think maybe the casing is probably smaller as well because there's not as much insulation. But the bottom line here, what you need to know is it's an HVLP sprayer, which is an awesome way to apply finishes. So if you haven't gotten into the spraying game, this is a way to do it with a self-contained unit. You don't need a compressor. You just get a gun, the hose, and the unit itself, which is kind of like a vacuum cleaner in reverse, blowing air. This is a great way to finish your projects.
They're giving this away to our audience. Almost a $600 value.
Yeah, $590 for this thing, so that's kind of a big deal. Now, what about this next one?
We have ArborTech. ArborTech decided to give away a mini grinder with us this month. And yeah, you've done some fun stuff with ArborTech before, and
I do fun stuff.
well, you did the
ArborTech.
rock and roll guy.
Today won't be so
That was
fun.
one of my favorite skits.
I won't be wearing a wig today. You know what? I haven't even really done anything with this. I want to try this out.
It's brand new. I mean, they just launched it.
Well, it's got here's the deal. You've got a very aggressive cutting blade on the tip here. Looks like they have sanding pads that you can add as well for aggressive sanding. And you may have seen me use the sculpting tools in the past for larger work. Well, this is a much smaller blade. Frankly, I'll be honest. I don't know what kind of use I'm personally going to have with this, because I think this type of tool requires a little bit of artistic skill, something I lack completely. So you know what? If you want to turn the camera over here, let's fire this up. Let's see what this thing does. I've got an outlet ready. Let's make a little sawdust in the morning. Safety first, folks. Let's not get dust all over that. Now, I'm not going to carve a man in a tree or anything like that. I'm just going to see what this thing can do. Strap in. Yeah, baby.
Nice little finesse.
I like that. That is really nice.
Smells like shop class.
Well, that's because there's wood being cut. Look, I made a butterfly. All right. So that is that's some very cool stuff. ArborTech mini grinder and an HVLP spray system. Incidentally, $259 for that ArborTech mini grinder. Flip that bad boy around for me. Thank you. So that's a lot of valuable free stuff going out there.
So you have until the end of the month to put your name in. There are actually 9 possible ways you can enter. So we give lots of options for entering. So if you don't do Facebook, don't worry. You can still sign up through just giving us your email or through Twitter.
Yeah.
And Pinterest, I think even. So there's like a whole bunch of different ways.
Nice. Okay, so all of that is at thewoodwhisperer.com/giveaway.
Yep.
Is that a bird?
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that noise? That's terrible. I thought it was like feedback. Okay, it's a bird.
You should probably say that it is limited to the U.S.
Oh, yeah. Sorry for those of you who are international, but this is limited to United States and Canada. And if you want to know why, there's a long drawn-out reason, but it is due to international giveaway rules and the liability that we open ourselves up to by doing giveaways internationally. Look into it. It's kind of a, you know what, it's a pain in the butt. All right, so that's our giveaways. Let's get into some news and announcements. Now, if you've been online in the last couple of days and you're a woodworker, you probably noticed I'm going to call it the Great Bessey Lowe's Clamp Frenzy of 2014. This was an amazing thing to watch. I heard a couple days ago that Lowe's was reducing the prices of their Bessey clamps. Apparently they lost the contract or let go of a contract and Home Depot's getting it. I don't care about that. Bottom line is the prices are insanely cheap and everybody ran out to their local Lowe's, and if they weren't already pilfered, they picked up what was left over. And we've got a couple of threads on Facebook with just picture after picture of people who have just gone nuts at their local store because clamps are expensive, but you do really need a lot of them. And this is a great way to get them when something's reduced. So I think we're going to give a no prize like they used to in Marvel Comics, right? The no prize goes to Ryan Royal, and this is what he came home with. That is insane. He says it's $1,032 worth of clamps, $200. What? Right? That's great. So good stuff. Congrats to everybody who was able to take advantage of that. I went to my local Lowe's and there was nothing there. I had no idea there were any woodworkers in this town besides me. So, all right, let's move on to our featured viewer project. Now, we get a lot of viewer projects at the Wood Whisperer. We post anywhere from 4 to 8 a month, and it's really there for inspiration so you can see what your fellow woodworkers are up to. And I would like to highlight 1 or 2 of those every time we do a show like this. This one in particular is called Anna's Hope Chest. It's made by Steve Boudreau, and here's what he says about it. One of the things I wanted to accomplish with this project was to use more hand tools and fewer power tools and very few mechanical fasteners. Curly cherry for the frame, Pennsylvania cherry for the panels in the top. The biggest challenge with them was gluing up all the joints and inserting all the panels before the glue started to set. The finish is about 6 to 8 coats of Danish oil, rubbed in, wet sanded to 602 coats of wax. This piece was built for my daughter and dedicated to my dad, who apparently allowed him to sweep up all the sawdust in his shop when he was little, and taught him and inspired him to be a woodworker. Beautiful stuff, Steve. That was playing a little bit of favorites here. These are my favorite projects that we're going to show. Not by committee. I just said, hey, that looks good. All right, let's jump into, I kind of stole this from Wood Talk, and that's the kickback segment. I mean, what better way to refer to feedback from people, other woodworkers, than kickback? Although hopefully most of the feedback will hurt a little bit less than kickback. Got a couple of things. First of all, this is hot off the press. This is right from this morning. I got a Twitter, or not on Twitter, a Facebook comment from Chuck Hampton who says, another look at these projects and answer questions video? Do we really need another one? Well, thanks for the feedback there, Chuck. I hope you enjoyed the show that you haven't seen yet. Ultimately, the answer is no, we don't need another video. We certainly don't need another woodworker on YouTube showing how he built something or she built something in their shops. I mean, but since when is it always about needs? Right. There are different personalities, there's different perspectives, there's different ways to get jobs done. And I celebrate having hundreds of options. I'm glad we have so many people out there doing their thing online. So I know you haven't seen this show. Feel free to pass judgment on it after the fact, but ultimately, even if this were a carbon copy of something else that's out there, which it isn't, but if it was that, would that be such a bad thing? You don't have to watch it. But if you like it, hopefully you'll get some inspiration from it. That's the point. And it's a different person, a different perspective. I wouldn't care if we had dozens of these shows. If I had something to offer and something to say, I'm going to do it. And I encourage everyone else to do that too.
We wouldn't have if it was just about...
They can't hear you over there.
No, sorry.
Yeah, we don't have her mic, so sometimes you'll hear a little mouse in the background. Nicole's having a conversation with herself. Yeah, that'll be fun to watch. Okay, so our second email here, and this is, I think this is a really good one. Let me get it. This is from Chris. He emailed us and asked about the concept of makers versus woodworkers, and we could probably spend a lot of time on this, but we're going to move through it pretty quickly. He says, this link showed up in my social media feed today, and it's a Nerdist article talking about Adam Savage, you know him, right, from the Mythbusters, and how he's sort of spearheading the whole maker revolution, which is really a big deal. And he goes on, well, let me just say the article is a little quote here from the article. It says, by letting us into his crafting world, Savage has exposed us to an idea that's been long lost in popular culture. Experiencing things is cool, but making them is way cooler. Right? I couldn't agree more, you know, and frankly, anyone who has been creating for a while, be it a woodworker, a sculptor, a metalworker, these people know this already. It's a question of whether it's permeated into popular culture yet, and someone like Adam Savage just might be the right person to push that into popular culture. It's a very cool thing. So Chris goes on to say, I've been woodworking for a couple of years. As a huge fan of Adam Savage, I'm finding myself drawn more and more to these hippies that call themselves makers. Which makes me ask the question, is there a real divide between woodworkers and makers? Would I be crossing the line if I start calling myself a maker instead of a woodworker? Well, I looked it up because I was curious what the general consensus is. So according to Wikipedia, the maker culture represents a technology-based extension of the DIY culture. Typical interests enjoyed by the maker culture include engineering-oriented pursuits such as electronics, robotics, 3D printing, and the use of CNC tools, as well as more traditional activities like metalworking, woodworking, and traditional arts and crafts. All right, so there's a clear difference there, right? Now, personally, I don't care what you call yourself. It's just a label, and it's ultimately unimportant to what you do in your shop. But I do think that there is a difference if you're getting specific about the terminology. I wouldn't call myself a maker. I mean, I do make things, but the sort of terminology that says what a maker is, I really don't focus. I'm more of a traditional woodworker. I'm not someone who's necessarily going to be incorporating like a laser engraver or a CNC machine or even electronics into the things that I build. But there are plenty of people out there who are doing that, and frankly, that's the thing I think that we need to celebrate. I also got another email from Ashley who says, very informative email in fact, I could post the whole thing if you're interested. Ashley says, as a maker, it's the idea or design that I want to execute, and that's the source of the authenticity. And instead of being a mass consumer, I can conceive and build a thing that's just for me. In woodworking, I find that it's more about the process you take to get there, which is maybe why we call ourselves woodworkers and not furniture makers. Hand tool and power tool guys like to argue whose process is the more authentic form of woodworking. Both seem to agree that adding additional degrees of automation like CNC somehow diminishes the authenticity of the work, as you've taken a shortcut that smacks of mass production. That's a really good point, right? And I think that's largely true. So this is really all just food for thought, and what I want to know from you is how you view this whole maker revolution. Because the truth is that this is a good thing. Whether or not you like the terminology or the fact that they're incorporating CNC and other automation, I think ultimately it's a very good thing, because the people who are coming in for these other reasons that someone may not understand why someone wants to build a suit of armor or build a robot they saw from a science fiction show, but ultimately that person is probably going to find some woodworking videos and find out how to do some things with woodworking tools. This may be the source for the next generation of woodworkers. So I don't think there's, in fact, Ashley made a comment in a subsequent email that I thought was really insightful, that he says every time he's at the local maker space where he goes to build, he has to laugh when he hears about, I guess old school magazines maybe claiming that woodworkers are dying off and we have to find a way to save the craft, when he looks around at this crowded space of creative minds building together and doing things with woodworking tools. It may not be the way that traditional fine woodworking envisioned things going, but it may be the thing that keeps this craft alive. So very compelling stuff. Let us know in the comments. There's YouTube comments that you could leave. You could comment on this post after it's edited. Let us know what you think about it. It's kind of an interesting thing. All right. Good stuff. Let's see. I think I need a sip of coffee. Hold on. I can put my mouth over the right spot here. All right. So in case you missed it, there's a lot of cool stuff online. Nicole, when you get a chance, can you plug in my laptop? Yeah, the thing's over there. There's a lot of content online, and if you aren't aware of Drunken Woodworker, really cool dude, David reviews a lot of online content very specific to the crafting and woodworking community. He does this weekly, so I'm going to just recommend that right off the hop as something you should check out routinely if you really want to keep up with it. That's not necessarily my goal here. We're actually going to look at not just woodworking videos from our community members, but things a little bit outside, or it's sort of tangential to the woodworking and the craft, things that really start to make you think. So we're going to open it up a little bit. The first one here is actually from a buddy of ours, Bill Duran, and give me a second here. I've got a video clip. It just takes a couple seconds to fire up. Bill Duran is a prop maker. He's certainly one of those people who you would call a maker. Whoops.
I grabbed some sturdy leather that I had laying around and got it all soaked up with water. And then I put it on the wooden form that I cut out and clamped the frame over the top of it. I left this contraption overnight until the leather completely dried, giving me a chunk of leather that was the same form as my Leatherman. Finally, using a pair of needles and some hemp thread, I stitched the two halves of the piece together. This was a really fun, cool, quick little build. It took me maybe a couple of hours, and I had to wait overnight for the leather to dry.
Okay, I realize I may have cut myself off as I opened up the video clip because it kills my audio. Bottom line is, that's my buddy Bill Duran, and he was actually just in the shop. He's here for Comic-Con, and he's a prop maker. And here's a guy who I think falls under that category of maker, using leather, using wood. And if you get a chance, I'll put the link in the show notes for this. You can go see the entire project for this little Leatherman case. It's fantastic, and he's using a bunch of different materials and woodworking tools, a lot of different things just to make this very simple project that I think any of us could probably make if we had a little piece of leather and a Leatherman to put it in. So keep an eye out for stuff like that. His website is Punished Props. And he just makes incredible stuff. I actually have a couple of his stickers back here. He makes replica guns and things from video games. Really cool dude. Okay, now the second thing you may have missed, and this is not necessarily new, I believe this was an Adam Savage talk from a Maker Faire, 2012, all right? And I'm gonna stop talking now before the video cuts me off.
But more than that, make what you want. It starts with what you want to have. I get asked a lot, how do I learn how to weld? How do I learn how to do electronics? And my advice is always the same. Choose a project. Don't just read about which do you think is going to work better to learn about electronics. Reading a book about it and putting together some Zener diodes and resistors and LEDs, or building your own fully operational tricorder from Star Trek. When you have a final goal, whatever that goal is, you are more likely to finish. You're more likely to get through that point in every project when the thing you're building is kicking your butt and making you really mad because you're failing. That final goal will carry you past that.
Really inspirational, passionate stuff that comes from Adam, and I think that's why in that Nerdist article you read about him sort of propelling the maker revolution in a way. These maker fairs are incredible. I mean, there are just thousands and thousands of creative people converging in one space. Some of them are woodworkers, some of them are focused in other areas, but very cool stuff. Now, how this relates to woodworking is actually a piece of advice I try to give new woodworkers all the time. And that is, don't necessarily go in your shop and spend a weekend. I mean, you can do this. I don't want to say there's only one way to do things, but I just don't think it's a great use of your time to sit there and practice one thing over and over. Like, let's say you want to get into hand-cut dovetails. So you have all these little sample things and you cut 20 or 30 of them until you think it's perfect. I would much rather see you, okay, practice one, right? But then build something. Build something where the stakes are high, where your passion is in it and you want to get to that finish line. It's amazing how much better the lessons you'll learn are if you're actually building something. So I absolutely love that advice. It's on a broader scale that he's giving there, but in terms of woodworking, it's totally the way to go. And frankly, it's the way that I got better at woodworking in a very short amount of time. I never actually practiced anything, maybe a quick cut to get things ready, but every time I built something, it was probably the first time I was building that thing. And my skills then progressed much quicker because of it. Okay, so let's move on to gear up. It's time to gear up. Nicole, you want to yell? I think Nicole might narrate and sing our transitions. What I want to show you here, if you come down to the workbench with the camera, I will give you a view of a cool new tool that I have. Yeah, get up closer. Okay. I've got a nice selection of brad nailers here, and if you aren't familiar, brad nailers are just run on compressed air, and you could get them with different size nails. And typically, at least traditionally, what I've been aware of are the two that your average woodworker, furniture maker will use. If you're sort of framing or something, you need much bigger ones. But the 23 gauge is a little pin nailer, and then an 18 gauge brad nailer is a much more substantial one, has good hold, actually has a good size head on the nail. And then I got this little sample gun here from Senko. This is right in the middle. This is a 21 gauge nailer. So if you can, let's get a little close up here and I could show you the difference. This is just a little sample board that I did. You want to get a little zoomy here. Right? Might be hard to see, but if you look very closely, here are 23 gauge pins, very, very small hole, right? I clustered a bunch of them together so it's fairly obvious to see. Next to that is the 21 gauge and then the 18 gauge. All right, so the bigger one, I mean, look at the size of that hole. Right? Now the problem with your smaller ones, these pins, is like I said, they have no head on them. They're just a clean pin, a wire nail that doesn't really have that much holding power. It does work, and it leaves a nice tiny little hole because there's no head, but there's not much holding power. 18, on the other end of the spectrum, has great holding power, but you get this giant rectangular hole at the top. But the 21 is kind of a nice compromise because you do have the head on the nail, but it's much less substantial, and you have a much easier to fill hole that's not quite as clear of a rectangle as these other ones. Okay, so this is a new gun. It's the Finish Pro 21 LXP. And frankly, I think this may be the one that I use from now on. I don't know that I want to use the 18 gauge anymore for the things that I build. I like the idea of that the small head and still getting the holding power that I typically would get from an 18 gauge brad nail gun.
In what scenario would you use it?
When you use this depends on the type of woodworking you do and your preference, your personal preference in tooling. If you watch the new Yankee Workshop classic episodes, it's used on every project. When you're putting on molding, sometimes you're putting a little molding on the top of a cabinet, it's very difficult to clamp that in place. So brad nails are perfect because you can kind of just hold it there, the glue dries. And the funny joke that everybody always says is that Norm would use the nails just until the glue dried. Now, he certainly didn't mean to imply that he was going to go back and remove those nails afterwards, but the idea is the nails are only holding it there till the glue dries because the glue bond is actually what's going to secure that thing for life. The nails are just there to act as a little clamping mechanism. So you can use these in lots of different things. For me, primarily, I use them for jig building. In fact, I've got a jig that I'm going to show you later that was held together with brad nails, but there are some cases in my work that I'll use it. There are people who use them all the time in their work. It just depends. It's just another method of fastening things together. All right. Gear up. Gear up is going to be fun. We get a lot of stuff through this shop that I don't necessarily get to incorporate into the show, but they are sent to me as a means to sort of review them. And I don't always review tools because I don't always like reviewing tools. So this is a great way for me to show you some things that come through the shop that you might be interested in. All right, what's up next? Let's look at some books, DVDs. What's the latest? What's the haps? You guys know David Marks, right? You're familiar with the man. Check that out. Season 5 of Woodworks was just released. Now, if you're not familiar, maybe you're new to woodworking. Woodworks is an old TV show that was on HGTV, as well as the DIY network. Ran for several years, and there's quite a few seasons. There's a lot of content with some great projects. David's a great guy, incredible woodworker, master craftsman, someone you should definitely know, someone you should definitely follow. So season 5 of Woodworks is out, and you can get that at djmarks.com. In fact, David's got a whole new website that they're very proud of. You go to the store, there's digital downloads if you don't want to buy the DVD, or you can actually purchase a DVD. Now, I don't have season 5 on hand right now, but I do have an unopened copy of season 4. And season 4 is fantastic. And we're going to give this away right now. And we're not going to be able to tell you who the winner is. We'll do that after the show. But we're going to pick somebody from the YouTube comment section. So if you've left a comment there already, you're entered. If you haven't, go to the YouTube channel, go ahead and put a comment in there, and we're going to pick a name. We'll message you on YouTube, so keep an eye out for that. Don't email us asking if you won, because we'll ignore it. Nicole will pick someone out, and she'll message you and let you know that you won this. We'll just need your address. And this will be for international. If we get an international person, we will send it overseas, no problem. Now, whether you can actually watch this DVD overseas, I don't know if there's regional encoding on it. That's for you to figure out. I don't know. Probably not, but you never know. All right, so again, djmarks.com. You can learn more about David. All right, so now it's time for In the Shop. This is where I show you what I'm working on, or what I've been working on in the last couple of weeks, and I've got a couple of examples. I will need the camera moved down, Nicole. The first thing is this little guy. Right, this is a small, I'll wait till you're done.
You can go.
No. If the camera's moving and I have to edit that out later, it's a pain in my butt.
There you go.
We're good? All right, this is a small jewelry box with a breadboard top, right? And the inside is covered with rice paper on the bottom, quarter sawn walnut, and my favorite detail here of all, the finger joints on the ends. Now these finger joints were cut on the bandsaw. We'll show you that technique. This is a video that's going to be on the free site, so no complaining that it's in the guild. Shut up. But, I'm being nice. Really cool project. There's still more to be done. You can see it's not finished, and here's the reason why. You may have heard of a woodworker named Gary Rogowski. Incredible woodworker. In fact, he wrote one of the first books I read in woodworking, which is the joinery book by Fine Woodworking, by Taunton Press. And it's like the definitive library shelf title reference book that woodworkers use for joinery. I've got it right over there.
Show 'em your shelf.
Well, it's too much work. But anyway, Gary Rogowski, great guy. Well, he has family in the area. He stopped by and spent 2 days in the shop with me. We got as much done as we could, and we're going to bring this project to you as soon as I can. Now, really, I just need to finish it up. So he kind of did 3/4 of the work, and then I'm going to come in and finish it off and probably ruin the whole thing, which is, that's what I do best. So, no, but seriously, it's going to be a great project. I think you're really going to love it. The other thing I'm working on is a guild project, and that's down here. We're building a Moorish chair. Hi, my name's Mark. I build things. All right, so this is the frame of the Moorish chair. Still has a lot of work to go. We're not quite there yet, but you can see I've got a little footstool here, ottoman, whatever you want to call it. And there's quite a bit of work to go. The arms on this piece are going to be bent laminated, so there's a bow arm design. And you'll notice that the sides are still very weird looking. They're still bulky and square. The reason for that is once we have that bent arm, we're going to drop it in place and trace the final shape on here. And then this way we get a nice, perfect custom fit. This project is actually going on right now in the guild, so good stuff. This is definitely going to be a very comfortable chair. Now the bent lamination process is something that we could talk a little bit about. If you take a peek back here, you'll see my jig. This monstrosity medieval torture device. Is my computer in the way?
I got it.
Okay. This is a bending form that I created. And you can see it's got this segmented top section, and this is so that we can have individual pressure all the way across. So we're going to put a stack of laminates in here with glue between each layer and press the crap out of this thing until it bends to the shape we want, right? And it's an incredible process. It took me a weekend just to do this. Seems like a lot of work just to prep for a part of the project, but it's totally worth it because bent lamination is an awesome process, but it's one you have to respect. If you don't plan ahead with your jigs and things like that, you will be in hot water once that glue is on there and drying. Now, I have a little sample here that I could show you of bent lamination so you can see the logic behind it. A little bit of a close-up on this. Okay. What I have here is a little stack of laminations. These were cut at the bandsaw. You usually keep them in the order that you cut them so that you have grain matching on the sides and on the end grain. So when you have this stacked together, you put a whole bunch of glue between each layer and you bend it on a form, right? So this would be the shape you're going for. And then you have the negative or the top of the form that comes in like this and pinches it closed. And then once the glue sets, it will stay roughly in that shape. You might get a little bit of spring back, but not much. All right, and the cool thing about this, what we've done with our jig over here, is we've segmented this top piece into individual sections, which will give us better clamping pressure across the entire thing. All right, but that's just a little miniature example of what bending is all about. And that's probably the next video in the guild will be covering the actual cutting of the laminates and the bending. If anyone is interested, it's not a sales pitch, but well, yeah, it is. Let's not sugarcoat it. TheWoodWhispererGuild.com if you want more information on that stuff. Now, the most interesting part of the show, live questions. So if you are, I think we're only 2 people here, so we're trying to keep this as simple as possible. If you've put a question into the YouTube comment feed, we'll be able to check that and answer them. We're going to probably pick 3 questions. Yeah, let's go with 3 questions.
I sent you one.
I see it. Okay, WatchingDragon asks, hey, hey, how do you cut wood for a wooden tankard without table saw, bandsaw, grinder, router, just hand tools right now? I guess it really kind of depends on how you want to construct that tankard. If you're doing sort of a coopered design, you can make these cuts with a handsaw, but you're probably going to want to go back with a hand plane to smooth them. Because the idea is each one gets cut on a slight bevel, and then you'll be able to glue them together. So once they piece together and you get your angles right, you want to draw all this out first to make sure you get your angles done properly. And you'll be able to cut along there, but it is going to be key that you smooth the joints between those beveled pieces. Otherwise the joints won't line up properly, you'll never get a good seal, and especially if you are putting liquid in there, you need those joints to be nice and tight. So you should theoretically be able to cut them to size, use a hand plane to smooth them out, join them together, and then probably use like a band clamp Once you glue it together with a nice waterproof glue, put a band clamp around there, clamp everything together, and then clean it up. Now, I'll be honest, I've never built a tankard. I've never built anything out of wood that's meant to hold water, so I can't give a whole lot of advice on that. But construction-wise, it's going to be some work, but it should be something you can do without a ton of tools. Got another one?
I have one about the Senko.
Bring it on.
Someone's asking about the quality of it too.
Okay.
I think that's a question.
You think it is?
I don't know if that's a question. He had question marks in it, so.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is from Wood Turning John. He says 18 as well. I think the slightly larger hole will hold the filler better, question mark, question mark, question mark, but I've not tried the other yet. I don't really have a problem, even with a 23 gauge hole, I don't see a problem with it holding filler. If your filler is nice and moist, I use a simple water-based filler from Timbermate, and you put enough pressure on there, it doesn't really matter how big the hole is. I've never had an issue with like the stuff popping out because it didn't have enough grip. There's not that big of a difference. I would say that the 21 gauge hole is a little bit more like the 18 gauge hole than it is like a 23 gauge pin hole, right? So you do have some room there to drive that filler in and kind of cover it up. So I don't think it's going to be a problem at all.
I sent you another one.
From Patrick's workshop?
Yep.
How many layers will it have?
I'm guessing he's talking about.
Oh, I'm like cake? So someone say cake? Okay, how many layers will the lamination have? In our design, the final thickness of that lamination is going to be 1 inch after the bending. So we're going to probably divide that up into about 6 layers. I've seen some designs out there and techniques that only use 4 layers. The problem is the thicker you go with those laminations, the more clamping pressure you need to get it in the shape, and the more likely it is to spring back after the glue dries. So for me, I think it's better to err on the side of caution and use more layers than less layers. And I've never bent this shape before. A lot of times you have to prototype this stuff out to make sure that everything is going to work. So I wanted to stack the cards in my favor since I'm showing thousands of people how to do this. Let's cut a few more layers just to be safe. So I went with a total of 6 for a 1 inch thickness over that curve. All right, we'll do one more question because we are trying to keep this capped at a certain time limit here, but as long as you're asking questions, I guess we just keep rolling, huh?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it should be pretty short answer.
Okay. So Jonathan asks, Jonathan House says, when burning wood scraps, are there any types that are dangerous in terms of gases or cooking over a fire, plywood, MDF, melamine, etc.? All right, first rule, never burn your, well, okay, if you want to burn and just not be around and you don't mind a little bit of air pollution, is that bad advice? That's one thing, but generally speaking, I try not to burn any sort of sheet good. And here's the reason. Sheet goods are loaded with adhesives, and it's just nasty stuff. So burning it, I just can't imagine anything good coming out of that. You certainly don't want to burn it in an area where anyone is going to breathe it or anyone is cooking with it. Just not a good idea. The other thing that I try to avoid when we're talking about solid wood, I try to avoid anything that is in, generally speaking, the exotic category of woods. Exotics tend to have a lot of natural oils in them. There could be other things going on in terms of their composition, and there's just so many woods out there, I can't even give you specifics. There is a wood toxicity chart out there that you may want to take a look at. There's quite a few out there. That may help you and guide you into what things might be so, irritable, like my son every morning. Man, is he irritable lately. That may be so much of an irritant that there's just no way you want to burn that anywhere around people or food. When it comes to food, I smoke with my scraps all the time, but I stick to the domestic soft, well, I don't really use softwoods, domestic hardwoods primarily, just because that's what I'm building with. So I will smoke with cherry scraps, maple scraps, oak scraps. Those things are all fine. Certainly pressure treated stuff, stay away from it. Anything with a lot of sap in it, stay away from that too. Just as a safety precaution. Going through the questions here. We'll do one more. Okay, suggestions for, this is from Eric Coel. Suggestions for a good, cheap, readily available wood for a beginner woodworker. I think one of the better woods for the beginner woodworker, two of them, and one of them may be hard to get depending on your region, but a decent one is poplar. Poplar is fairly inexpensive. It's easy enough to work with. I think it's a good wood to learn with. Here's the problem with poplar. Most of the time, it's ugly. Right? So if you're going to paint the project, great. If you try to stain it, poplar doesn't really respond that well to staining. It's very blotchy, and poplar tends to have green streaks that run through it. So it's not the prettiest wood, but it's available, it's fairly inexpensive, and it works pretty well. So I still think it's a good option for learning, but you may consider painting it when you're done. Of course, alder. Now this may be a West Coast thing, because I don't think on the East Coast it's as plentiful, but around here, alder is incredibly inexpensive. Now it's a little bit soft, and when you try to chop it with a chisel, for instance, even the sharpest chisel, you tend to get crushed fibers instead of severed fibers. Pardon me. So that's kind of a little bit of an issue, but ultimately it's still inexpensive, and the great thing about alder is it looks gorgeous. Now you can take some precautions with blotch control if you need to stain it, but you can make alder look like cherry, you can make it look like walnut, and even on its own has just a beautiful, nice brown color. Right? So alder is another wood that I'd recommend. That's a great question. What exotic woods would I recommend for new woodworkers? Sorry. Gary Gilbert asked, what exotic woods would we recommend for new woodworkers? Well, any one that floats your boat and you can afford. Exotic woods are expensive, and they have a lot of different properties, a lot of different working properties. So I think if you're going to go in the world of exotics, you might want to start off, and this is ask 10 woodworkers, you might get 10 different answers here, but start off maybe with mahogany. I think mahogany is a good choice, fairly easy to work, especially if you're using power tools. Some of the stuff, if you're using hand tools, you might have some issues with a little bit of tear out, but ultimately the mahogany that I have access to, the African mahogany, is pretty darn good. You can get varieties of Honduran mahogany that are grown in sustainably harvested forests, like Fiji mahogany specifically, and it's the same. It's actually the same species of traditional Honduran mahogany, but it's grown quicker. It's not quite as good, doesn't quite have the color that traditional Honduran mahogany has, but it's pretty good stuff. I made a chair out of it in the past and was really happy with it. So I think mahogany is a good start, but if you're really going into the world of exotics, I don't know, just dive in if you're ready for it. They're a little harder to work, a little less predictable. Some of them are oily, and you have to be prepared for all those things, but it's totally worth it. It's just cost of doing business with exotics. Have you ever had, okay, this is Matt 815-0815. Have you ever had the problem that you spend the majority of time in your shop building things for and organizing your shop? I find my shop is something I'm never happy with and end up too much time working in the shop and not building things in the shop. I think this is a classic problem for hobbies, not just woodworking. Any type of hobby has the potential to get you locked down into research mode, or you're constantly focused. Like I built a home theater in one of our last house actually. Had a nice basement area, so I was able to just kind of do a DIY home theater. And I spent a lot of time in the AVS forum. Great forum, but if you go into the home theater section, you will find tons of people who never finish their home theater. Isn't the goal to build the home theater so you could sit in it with your family and enjoy some great movies or music or whatever? The problem is, for them, the hobby, part of the hobby, and their joy came from the construction and improvement of this space. So they never finished it, because finishing it means closing the door on that chapter of the process, and they never wanted to do that. The same thing can absolutely happen in woodworking, where you are so focused on building your shop, it's fun, you enjoy it, so you want to keep doing it. Here's the thing, if you want to build furniture, then yes, you need to stop what you're doing, stop improving the shop, and just start building furniture. If you're not happy with it, you'll fix it over time. There are plenty of things in this shop that I'm not happy with. I haven't finished moving in, technically. There's still a lot of things I need to build to get this space the way I want it, but that doesn't stop me from building furniture. I have to keep building, otherwise I have nothing to put online to show people. So for me, I have to do that. But if there were no cameras here and I was left to my own devices, if I wanted to spend the next 6 months improving my shop space, who has a right to tell me that that's not the right way to go? It's how I want to spend my time. So I recommend you sort of do a gut check. Do you want to build furniture, Or do you want to build stuff for your shop? Because either one is perfectly fine, and who cares what other people think about it? You are the only person you have to justify yourself to, or possibly your wife. Your spouse. All right, last question. This one is from Joe. Joe's our Reddit buddy. He says, what are your thoughts on the design aspect of woodworking? It seems most of the focus from major publications and online creators is placed on cutting dovetails, joinery, or recreating green and green. You know what, Joe? You'll find trends across traditional woodworking publications on everything. If you look hard enough, it's like when you buy a certain car and you notice every other car on the road, you see more of them because you now are aware of them. It happens in woodworking, and these publications print in cycles. They've always talked about dovetails. They've always talked about these certain elements. Green and green has been an issue for a long time, and maybe it's growing in popularity as people like me talk about it all the time too. But I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. It just is what it is. As far as the design aspect, I mean, it's kind of an interesting question, but I'm having trouble answering it because the one thing is, sort of we could be critical about what other things publish, and these magazines are publishing, but then I don't know that really relates to talking about design. Design is a very open-ended conversation, so it becomes difficult to talk about. I'm not well versed in traditional design. I never went to a design school, so a lot of times for me, my inspiration comes from things that I see in these magazines. Green and green was something I never heard of until, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and then I fell in love with it, so I wanted to start building it. So ultimately, keep looking. You're going to find common threads across the board, but look a little deeper. I mean, you're on Reddit all the time. I'm sure you're seeing tons of stuff that has nothing to do with green and green, or people who don't give a crap about dovetails, but they're still out there with passion, building projects,
Be sure to tell people about Reddit.
I don't know much about Reddit.
Well,
What do you want me to tell them?
The
There's a great subreddit, a woodworking subreddit over at reddit.com. Joe, if you want, put the link in the comment section so people can see it. Great group of woodworkers. I've done a couple of AMAs over there, Ask Me Anything, and really great bunch of people, and great place to share and ask questions. All right, I'll do one more.
They keep on asking about your tattoos.
What about my tattoos?
They're like, show them.
I could show my arms. I'm not showing you the ones on my back. That's a little bit private, y'all. JC asks, any suggestion on finishes for children's toys, namely the ones that keep putting into their mouths? Well, one of the best finishes is no finish. You don't really have to put anything on a child's toy if you really want to be super cautious about it, as long as it's a good quality wood that isn't going to splinter a lot. In fact, we bought a couple of teething rings for our son, and, well, Nicole bought it. I would have just made one, but she bought them online, and they're actually made from maple. It's very well sanded, and it doesn't splinter, and he was able to gnaw on that thing, and wood is surprisingly good for that because they've got really hard teeth behind their gums. So having something firm, but not as firm as like a metal, something like that for them to bite into is good, and it's a perfectly natural, clean material. So nothing at all is one option. You could always go with something like an oil, right? Like a tung oil, even boiled linseed oil. That'll give you the look of something that has finish on it. For a kid's toy, stay away from the boiled linseed oil because there's chemical dryers in there. Maybe go with a pure oil, like a pure tung oil, or even tried and true varnish is a good option. There's no petroleum distillates in that, so that might be a reasonable option. And then if you're looking for a film finish, consider shellac. Shellac is one of those materials that's a natural product. The stuff it's thinned with can be poisonous because it's alcohol, and a lot of times you're using denatured alcohol, which contains methanol, which will make you go blind. You don't necessarily want to drink it, but once it's dry, the film that's left over is actually something that's edible. It's something that we actually do eat in the form of medicines and candy coatings. All right, so that is also another option for you to consider if you want the film. But I think those are usually some of the most common things you'll see. There's probably other options. There's forums out there about kids' toys where they discuss this stuff in depth. All right, that was a lot more questions than I thought we'd do. Okay, so let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Next show, ultimately what we want to do is the first Friday of every new month. The problem is it's July next month, so July 4th, I believe, is Friday.
Yeah.
So we're going to bump it up a couple of days. We're going to do this on Wednesday, July 2nd. It's going to be 2 days early. but we're going to aim for the first Friday of every month thereafter. And frequency-wise, we're going to start with once a month. We'll see how this goes. Your feedback is going to help us decide what to do with this venture, whether this venture is worth doing, ultimately.
This is the first time we've done this in a long time. So.
Yeah, and I do monthly live shows for the Guild all the time. It's much more demo-oriented, but this is something a little bit more community-based, and that's what we think needs to happen here for us and for the people we hang out with. Some contact info. If you want to send a question in ahead of time, obviously I've got pre-prepared questions and things. You could use Twitter and use the hashtag TWWLive. That's a nice option to get to us. Facebook, I'm always on Facebook posting and sharing things. You can catch us there. We have a contact form that you can use at thewoodwhisperer.com/contact. And where else? Google Plus, we're everywhere.
Yeah, we are.
So get us your questions and we'll try to get them into the show, but obviously we can't answer all of them. And you always have a chance, if you're here live, to get your question answered right here as we're doing the show.
Scanning them all the time.
She's scanning them all the time. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. There will be an edited version of this available for YouTube view, and it will be a little bit more condensed, I think. And I got to get started on that because I want to get it out soon.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
All right. I need more coffee. So what's this about the tattoos? So this will be the after show.
We have an after show.
This is where the naked ladies come
So
out.
a number of people were asking to see your tattoos.
They're not great. You know, what are you going to do? This is just a little design, and there's a farmer tan in the background, which is essential for a good tattoo. I don't know, it's a thing with a purple flower. Because, you know, when you're 18 years old and you think to yourself, what would women really want to see on a guy's arm?
Yeah.
And the first thing that comes to mind is a purple tattoo, right?
A purple flower.
A purple flower. A purple flower tattoo. That's obviously why I got
This
it.
is my favorite one of yours.
This one is just another similar design. It's roughly in the shape of an S for my last name. There's really not a whole lot to it. This was the first tattoo I got, and this was to say to my mom, "Hey, screw you, lady." Because, man, she was not happy about that.
She might be
Hi,
watching.
Mom.
Hi.
She knows why I got my tattoos. I had piercings at the time, and
You broke her heart.
she hated, like, she could not stand, she couldn't understand the concept behind piercings because it wasn't something her generation did. But she did understand tattoos, so I actually was given permission to get the first one.
Yeah.
Was not given permission for the second one.
Or the third one.
Certainly not for the 3 that are on my back. But you don't need to see those today. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you again in a month.
Bye.
Peace out. Let me kill the feed here.